So I'm doing this one this time without any comments because I don't really want to be distracted because I have a few things to say. Um, it's funny because I didn't even, when I went to bed last night, I didn't even know really what I was going to talk about. But this morning, thanks to Daniel Doud and the stuff that he posted, in the last 24 hours, he's spoken of two people, my stepmother and Pat Goodwin, aka Felicity, co-founder, one of the co-founders of Ivory Garden. And it's funny because things just kind of fell into place for me. And it's interesting because they're trying to take my channel down hard. And if they do, those people who actually watch this, just go to my blog, davidshurter.com. You know, I'll start writing this shit out instead of doing videos. However, a puzzle piece, things I actually, it's funny how when you're reminded of one thing, everything kind of falls into place and then you can see the big picture. And this is my prediction. My experience with the Pacific Northwest is that it is beautiful and the weather is amazing, but it's inundated with Nazi occultists. They're not Satanists. They use that shit semantics to actually blow it all off. They're more Nazi than anything. But historically speaking, with Nazis comes the occult. And that's what I found out. That was my experience with the Pacific Northwest. Felicity is a co-founder of Ivory Garden. It started off with 3 women, but one was dead. And when I came into it, that woman was already dead, and it was just Lori King and Pat Goodwin, and they weren't on good terms because Pat Goodwin took over and Lori was upset. I'm not saying anything that isn't just ancient history. Everyone knows about this. I only met Lori King once, and that was at the first trauma conference in Seattle. She and that Amber Volatin, who was a transsexual woman, and their little entourage that was all around them. And Lori King didn't like me because I was viewed as Pat Goodwin's friend, even though it was tenuous at best. I find it interesting that I may not have known that Doug Mesner, aka Lucian Greaves, founder of the Satanic Temple, lived 23 miles away from Algona in Tacoma for the 3+ years that I lived and went through everything I did in Algona. But chances are she did. Sorry. When I first met Felicity online, because she was watching me fight with Doug Lucian Greaves, founder of the Satanic Temple. Because after I published my book in 2012, it was like a non-stop hornet's nest with that dickhead. Just constant attacks. Constant attacks. And Felicity befriended me online and then convinced me to come visit in Washington. And all the while, my ex, who wasn't my ex at the time, was saying that I should go out there and actually look for property that maybe we could get for vacation, just so we had another place to go. And I thought, that could work. So I get out there And the day after I get out there, my ex calls me up, says he wants to split up, and then ghosts me. And I'm with a friend who also smokes pot. So I asked Felicity to get us a bag of pot because it was like, I don't know, maybe a month before everything became legal. And so she did because everyone up, I figured, you know. So we get this. I'm going through hell because now I'm in a mess with a divorce. And 2 or 3 days after we get out there, my friend who drove out there with me ends up calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning from the emergency room of the hospital. And they found him all beaten up at the railroad tracks, but he had absolutely no idea how he got there. And it was just a bizarre situation. I didn't understand what the hell was going on at the time. But so my ex helped him fly back home, back to Iowa. And so I'm out there, and my sister is concerned because I'm not handling the divorce well. So right after all of that, she calls the cops, and it was the first time I ever met Officer Gilbert Lenker. He was Algona, the only policeman that I ever met that I ever found worth a shit. Didn't have any power, couldn't affect anything really. Still a good guy. But he came and then said, just to cross the, T's and dot the I's, could he just take me to the emergency room and have him look me out? And I was just like, okay, fine, if it'll get everyone off my ass. So I did. So they tested my blood, and the nurse came back and said, so you told us that you smoked pot, but when did you do PCP? And I didn't have a clue what PCP was. Come to find out, what they explained to me was most likely PCP was all over the pot that we got from Felicity's friend. And that's the reason why my friend ended up at the emergency room not even knowing what the fuck had happened to him, because he was also smoking that stuff with PCP. But for some reason, it didn't have really that much effect on me at all, if any. I certainly didn't end up someplace I didn't know where I was, all beaten up, and didn't have any recall of it, But that was just the first week. And, but I loved Felicity. They always send me people. I loved Felicity. The Felicity, the problem with Felicity when I left was not that I was sending her harassing emails and all of that. It's just that when I get up and go, I just get up and go. I just go. When I've had enough, I've had enough. I don't want to talk. I don't want to have any exposure. I just go away. And that was the issue. But who knows what she and that deputy Ryan Miller, Officer Ryan Miller of Algona, who now I think he runs things, him and Doug Mesner. Because Doug Mesner was all involved. He was all involved in Tacoma, and they can write whatever the fuck they want. There's no 1-year-old involved in that protection order. And that protection order is, you can look at it and realize what I was saying, that they were connected to Doug Mesner and the temple, or the Satanic Temple, is kind of a no-brainer when you look at all those videos, and they had nothing to do with the petitioners whatsoever, but only and solely dealt with Doug Mesner. And now they don't want you to look at that. They want to say that there was a 1-year-old involved in these protection orders, which in itself is stupid. But I started thinking about all of this stuff with Pat Goodwin and Felicity and Ivory Garden. And because I hadn't really thought about that whole situation in a long time. She, like I said, is one of three founders of Ivory Garden. She's the only one left alive. And Lori King supposedly committed suicide the same Sunday as the second conference was finishing up on that Sunday. Lori King. And you want to know how I know about all of this? Is because I was friends for a while. After I moved and bought my house, I was still friends with Felicity for a while. And she was the one who brought me into her office in her bedroom and sat me down and then video called like 4 women who were all involved with this whole thing with Lori King. That's how I found out that Amber Volatin showed up at Lori King's house and took her down there. And then Lori King supposedly committed suicide, but Amber Volatin went all over and bragged to people that she was the one who fed Lori King pills. And Lori King just at that point just gave up and just fucking took him, you know? And she bragged about it. Just like when they came in for Owen and bragged about it. But as it was, drove 2.5 hours unbeknownst to anybody, picked her up, brought her to her house, and then that Sunday, the same Sunday that the Ivory Garden is finishing its second trauma conference in Seattle, Lori King commits suicide at Amber Volatin's house. And obviously, since they showed up, the husband had a problem with it. Lori King, husband, who I've never met, must have had a problem with it because he was dead within a year. Within a year later, he was dead. And so they're all working together. When I say investigate people, yeah, investigate me, investigate all the people around me. And I'm not just talking about Sherilyn and Glenna. Those are just 2. A big one, fuck, I'd look into the whole Ivory Garden thing. I would. That's just me. That's just me. But I've been, to be quite honest, having a dark night of the soul because what I see is them just being able to do whatever the fuck they want. And nothing is happening. But this morning, journeying on the whole situation, especially with the thing with Pat Goodwin and all of that, I realized a lot of this is centered on in the Pacific Northwest. Sid Seymour, who was an acquaintance, definitely co-worker with Mike Lucchino in San Francisco, and it goes all the way up to British Columbia. And that whole area is inundated with Nazi occultists. They're occultists. They fancy themselves magicians. That's the reason why Daniel Doud is running around now calling himself American Witchcraft. Because they're magicians. They're, you know, little gods in the making. But what I see happening, what I saw happen, is that heaven is about ready to fuck up. This is what I saw. The Pacific Northwest has been judged. And not only have you been found wanting, but there is an entire group of you that have been found to be an abomination. And heaven is about ready to fuck your asses up. Completely as a whole. Everything in Olympia, everything in Tacoma, everything in Algona, you know, all of it, all of it, all of the Nazi occultists. You better move quick. And it's funny because I believe that it was Doug Mesner, Lucian Greaves, founder of the Satanic Temple, who came in here a few lives ago and said, oh, you keep preaching this, everything is over, blah, 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 blah. When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? I can't tell you when this is going to happen, but my guess is it's going to be sooner than later. That's what I think. I think that the Pacific Northwest, from Pacific, British Columbia, all the way down to San Francisco, maybe further, is fucked. Is fucked. Heaven is about ready to take it over. Because heaven, for me, it's like an answered prayer. Because The problem is that I see that I'm told that all of this shit was worth it and what I did was worth it. And of course, I'm second guessing. When you don't see a lot of movement going on, I see them being able to do whatever the fuck they want and heaven not responding. But then heaven never works on the time frame it should. As far as I'm concerned. To be quite honest, you know, I'd rather have it today. But that's not how it works. But it's about ready to happen. So the second part about this whole situation with Daniel Doud, because when I woke up this morning, I realized that he not only brought up Pat Goodman, who I believe was involved, who has been involved with a lot of stuff that, you know, I miss her in a way, but I made Fiona laugh because I said, I really missed Sherilyn. And then I, not even thinking, said, well, yeah, except for the fact that she wanted to slit my throat. And Fiona laughed for 10 minutes. Hysterically laughed for 10 minutes. She couldn't stop. She was just like, isn't that how it is? That is a lot like how it is. And as it is, I think that all of this shit's about ready to be dealt with the Pacific Northwest. My stepmother and all of that goes, go ahead and run with it. Run with whatever you think you need to run with. You're running with shit that I told Sherilyn. So let me tell you about my stepmother and all of this shit. First of all, I never stood over her in her bed with a butcher knife. I had to deal with that stupid story for my whole fucking childhood. And then, when I was an adult, it was just, they were in the house that they were in, with the house that my dad died in. And she brought that shit up, and I told her that is a stupid fucking story, so let's just follow it to its ultimate conclusion. I said, okay, so you wake up and I'm standing over you with the butcher knife. Then what? She told me I told you to go back to bed. Oh, so you just told me to go back to bed and what, just rolled back over and went to sleep? My dad was right beside you. You didn't wake him up? None of that. See, so after I had that conversation later on, when my dad and I were alone, my dad said, you never did stand over her with the butcher knife. And I told my dad, dude, blood is disgusting. It goes everywhere. It's not a pretty red. The minute it hits air, it turns brown and it starts to dry out immediately. And it's a sticky, smelly, awful mess. It tastes terrible. And I had to deal with it a lot under the age of 10. Blood is awful. So I told my dad, you know, if I really wanted to kill you as a kid, I would have just gone into your dresser drawer and got out your gun. And then the bullets that you had in the drawer above it, I would have just filled your gun and then stood at your doorway and shot you to death while you slept. But you want to know what? That's all incidental because none of it fucking happened. You know? There's only one time I ever manhandled my stepmother. Only once. And it was because I was coming out of the house. I'd been up all night typing a report for a class that I was flunking. I had a terrible headache. She smacked me on the head and I told her to go fuck herself. And walked out the door. And she followed me, grabbed my arm, and my report that I'd been up all night fell into a fucking mud puddle. And so I will say, at that time, I put both of my hands on both of her shoulders and bounced her against the house. It was the one and only time I've ever touched that bitch. And she was one of my worst abusers. Worst fucking abusers. But you want to know what about that situation? I'm glad it happened. Because it was the last fucking time that bitch ever touched me again. She never once physically touched me again. And why? Because at that moment in time, that morning, she and I both realized how strong I was. And had I wanted to hurt my stepmother, there would have been nothing she could have fucking done to stop me, because I was way stronger. As it was, nothing has ever happened. I'm 58 years old, haven't been a kid, and that all happened when I was what? 17? As far as Joanne goes, the fact that my sister Kathy convinced everyone that she was dead. And then again, when I ran into her at the farmhouse, was there an altercation that I'm not aware of? We both saw each other. Was there an altercation? No, there wasn't. You know? She took that protection order out on me in 2012 because it was right before I had Rabbit Hole published. She was trying to stop Rabbit Hole from being published. She was also trying to get rid of my blog. That's what she was doing. She's doing the same thing now that they're all doing now. You know? Gabe Hoffman just threatened to do it a day or two ago. I got a cease and desist. And now I've gotten a complaint. Didn't do anything, but I got a complaint. They're trying to get my channel down. And maybe they'll succeed. Maybe they won't. But I have a feeling that heaven is about ready to fuck this group up in the Pacific Northwest. And it's going to change everything. It's going to change everything. That fault line off of the coast of Oregon, Mount Rainier, fuck Yellowstone. I think the plates are getting ready to go, and it's gonna, when it goes, it's gonna fuck everything up. And I think it's ready to happen. Heaven showed me. And so I'm just gonna say it out loud. We'll see what happens. Can't say when, but again, I think it's sooner than later. Heaven is getting ready to fuck their shit up. And with my stepmother, she has hell to pay. She has hell to pay. So does my sister Kathy for protecting her. They were all involved with hurting kids. This was all about child trafficking. This whole shit, my family was involved with fucking hurting kids. Ricky Chaddick, Johnny Gosh, Jacob Wetterling. And they can say whatever the fuck they want, but Jacob Wetterling, they didn't solve that case until it was under 2 weeks after. It wasn't even 2 weeks after my interview on the John B. Wells Caravan to Midnight, and all I talked about was Johnny Gosh. That's all I talked about. And within a week and a half. But then now, if you look at it, even all the shit is suspect. The dude never got charged. He was already in jail. They got his confession. None of it makes sense. The abductor pics that they had, the police portraits, have completely changed from what they were at the beginning. And when you bring it up, they say, well, people remembered more. 20 fucking 8 years later, they remembered more. Instead of the shit that they remembered that time. And all that shit looked exactly like my dad. You know? It ain't gonna change anything. And I think that Doug Mesner and his whole little group, I think the Pacific Northwest is in for some shit. I do. The Pacific Northwest has been judged. And they can deny their little Nazi occult bullshit all they fucking want. It doesn't make any difference. Let them do it till the cows come home. It changes nothing. And they have been found to be an abomination. And so all of this stupid shit that they keep coming up with, you know, all their stupid shit. Nobody's disability check got stolen. Not only did not anybody's disability check get stolen, but they're talking about this dude that lived with me, James Lico. And he had just moved in with me, but I had to go to Kent because I had to go to Social Security. So he decided he needed to go to Social Security too. So on the way there, he's trying to convince me to be his executor or something. Because someone from Florida, it was his executor, but it wasn't working out. And he wanted me to be his executor. And then I asked him why he needed an executor. And he was just like, well, there was this incident down in Florida and they said I was waving a gun around, but I wasn't waving around a gun. I just pulled my jacket back and showed him that I had a gun. So he still threatened this dude. So I told him, no, dude, just be your own executor. And that's what ended up happening. He was his own executor. But the issue that Pat Goodwin and I had was the dude lived with me for a short period of time. He was Googling maps and doing lines of sight from maps. That was weird enough. But he was convinced that he was being like they were hitting him with invisible laser beams. It was the weirdest thing. Anyway, he ended up having gallbladder or gallstones, I don't know, but they ended up taking him away by ambulance in the middle of the night. And the next morning, the cops knocked on my door from Algona, 3 of them. I know McKay was one of them. I don't remember who the other 2 were. Gilbert Lunger wasn't part of it at that time. And they told me that they could not come in my house and search, nor could they ask me to search my house. But if I wanted to go look in this dude's room and see if the dude had any guns, I could always do that and then let him know, because he wasn't supposed to have any guns. So of course they left. First thing I did was go right into his bedroom. He was sleeping with 2 handguns with 2 loaded clips for those handguns. And he had an arsenal of fucking guns. He had rifles. He had guns. And I was mad because I had puppies. And my office was right across from his door. So had he woken up, my dog scared him, and he shot through that fucking door. He not only would have hurt one of my puppies at the time, but me in my office. So I called the cops and had them come get his guns, because I guess he wasn't supposed to have guns. So I made them come get his guns. And that was what he was mad about. But when he got back, they asked me if he could come live with me after that. And I said, absolutely fucking not. So he ended up going and living at Felicity's, you know? And that was a fucking nightmare. I had to help Felicity get him out. He killed one of her dogs. And then she was afraid that he had put cameras all throughout the house, and she's a woman. And I finally convinced her. She got a hold of McKay and had him tossed out. You know, he doesn't have any right to be in your house. Toss him out. I loved Felicity, but I think that Felicity can do whatever she wants to do and then just blame it on one of her personalities, so she's never responsible. And she can be something else. That's just my personal opinion. And I think she knew that Doug Mesner lived 23 miles away from us, because we both lived in Algona. And I was never told. I didn't find that out until the week that I bought that house in Early, Iowa. I found out right after that. I wasn't out because. So. And with my stepmother, she's full of shit. She's full of shit. They can say that I was aggressive to her, but what they won't say is that I spent 6 months making her a gorgeous piece of artwork. There was a Celtic cross. There was like 3 feet by 3 feet. It was a total square, and it was huge. Reverse applique. Took me 6 months. Took it to her and left it for her at her work at ConAgra with the letters. So them actually trying to actually push that I've been aggressive to her. Oh yeah. You know? Didn't even do anything after 5 days later she fucking sold the shit. And I didn't do anything then either. They never have any examples. They have allegations and they all come from bad sources. They can come up with allegation after fucking allegation after allegation. But there's nothing to back it up. You know? Again, when I ran into her in the farmhouse, was there an altercation at all? No. But she knew who she was looking at, and I sure as fuck knew who I was looking at. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Kathy called Owen out of the blue that night. Told him that I was crazy, you know? That I didn't see who I saw. I fucking saw who I saw. She knew I saw her. So she went home, and I figured she called one of the fucking Hesters, or maybe she called Kathy, but she probably called the Hesters. One of them called Kathy. Kathy's calling Owen. You know, in my life, family has always been a 4-letter word. 4-letter word. Best to be avoided. Best to be avoided. Too much fucking constant trauma. Way too much. But when they're not making videos of my ex, you know, when they're not making, and I don't know what you want me to say. I just don't, you know, just to let you know about him and I. When I was in Washington, I went to it there. I was seeing a counselor out there too. She asked me to do a pros and cons list of my ex. In 15, 20 minutes, I had 15 things I didn't like about him. And then my therapist told me, okay, now let's stop and figure out some things you like about him. And in 25 minutes, I came up with 5 things. And 3 of those things were directly connected to things I didn't like. And what I realized was, I wasn't even in love with the real person. I was just enamored with the stability, the 20 years. Everyone would go 20 years, but there was no so better off. So they can make whatever fucking videos. I can't stop them from doing anything. Anything. They're going to do whatever the fuck it is they're going to do. At a time that if they were who they said they were, they would be chomping at the bit to actually expose this. I mean, since you've all been involved with child trafficking and you know so much about it, you know the whole skinny, everything, obviously you know where to look and who to look at. I would think that they would be chomping the bit to actually expose this shit instead of doing whatever they can to shut me down and shut me off. Take my channel down, just make everything go away with me. Because that's what they're doing. That's what's happening right now. That's what they're attempting to do. At a time They, anybody with any amount of sense can see that there's a cover up going on with this Epstein thing, and you can't blame it on. It's the government that we have right now that's doing the cover up. You can blame it on Obama all you want. You can blame it on Biden all you want. You can blame it on fucking Hillary Clinton all you want. Blah, 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 blah. And yes, they're probably all culpable. But right now, as it stands, it is so obvious that the very government that now, for absolutely no reason, has called the National Guard to Washington, D.C. and militarized Washington, D.C. for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It's not anything to do with crime. Crime is at a 30-year low. They've shown the statistics. It doesn't even make sense. The shit that he's saying is a lie. It's a distraction. And what is he trying to distract from? What are they all trying to distract from? The same reason why they're trying to close me down and off. The very same reason. And they can say whatever they want, but I have no history of any violence whatsoever. As far as the protection order goes out in Kent, Washington, that was all instrumented. Lucian Greaves, founder of the Satanic Temple, and all his bullshit, they were on top of me, just like I said they were. And so there was no 1-year-old involved. No 1-year-old I know of, you know? They were young, you know? But it's interesting. Because the day of court, I went through the metal detector and put my shit. I was picking my shit out of that little round thing that they have, that stuff. And the dude on that protection order threw his keys into my little thing. So I had to look at him because he threw his keys into my shit. What was I gonna do? You know? Aggressive fuck. You ain't gonna like where you're headed. You thought there was no accountability. You were wrong. You were wrong. You're about to find out. Eternity is before all of us, and some of us sooner than not. If you have darkened your heart, spent all of your time doing this dark ass shit, and a lot of people have. A lot of people have. This occultist bullshit. A lot of people have done some really fucking dark ass shit. Thought they had no accountability. And they're wrong. They're wrong. And I think heaven is about ready to fuck up the Pacific Northwest as a whole. I think it's about ready to fuck that whole area up as a whole. It's been judged and has been found to be an abomination. We'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I've been bitching at heaven because I'm tired of all of this. But I really do think that from what I saw this morning, it's getting ready to happen. And that's the reason why. Fuck, if they take this channel down. Shit, when I went to bed last night, I didn't even know what the fuck. This morning, I woke up to fucking Daniel Doud's bullshit on his mentions on YouTube. If I don't have to watch anything and they actually write shit, oh, I'll read that. I like to take screenshots and then read it and then answer it. And it's all fabricated or completely exaggerated. It's definitely always taken out of context. And again, it makes no difference about me. Investigate me, but investigate the people that have been around me, who have been heavily involved and influenced in my life. Not just all of them that have been online and all of that shit, but the people. Sherilyn, Glenna, Pat Goodwin. Good way to start, you know? And while you're looking into the whole situation, fuck, take a look. at Lori King. Because that was, and that woman didn't even like me. And I'm fighting for what's right with her. She didn't even like me. But it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make a difference. You don't have to like me. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It all needs to be done. Doug Mesner has been involved with a lot of it. A lot of it. A lot of it. And I bet, again, Pat Goodwin knew that he lived 23 miles away in Tacoma. Bet. Controlled opposition. And they can run with whatever the fuck my stepmother wants to say, whatever she is. That bitch has no idea what is facing her. She ain't gonna like it. None of them will. Anybody who finds themselves in the dark ain't gonna like the dark. Trust me. Trust me on that one. But with that said, I think that God is showing me that it's getting ready to do its little shock and awe campaign, and I have a feeling it's all going to be the Pacific Northwest. I think that there's a lot of energy focused on the Pacific Northwest. They stood against God. And now God is about ready, heaven is about ready to respond. That's how it works. Hasn't worked that way for a long time, but that's how it works now. And you ain't gonna like heaven's response. And it's not that there's Nazi occultists in every fucking bush, but there's enough of them to make a difference. And they're definitely inundated out from Seattle all the way to British Columbia. That includes Bohemian Grove. But then you go up into Oregon and all of the Nazi bullshit in there with Richard Spencer and everything that he was doing. All this stuff in Seattle, especially British Columbia. Notice how all of the right feet have stopped washing ashore. Wow, it went through a period where there was a bunch of right feet that washed ashore at the edge of British Columbia and Washington. But now all that has just mysteriously stopped. There were 17 of them and now there's no more. Wow. Wow. It's almost like it was being done and now it's not being done. So now it's not happening anymore. And all you have to do is Google right feet on the shores of Washington. That shit will come right on up. All this shit is going to fail. It has failed. The darkness is about... They owe a lot to the dark. They owe their souls. You can only choose one master, and there's only two to choose from. And both are calling their servants home. So if you are a servant of the light and you follow the word and you do everything that we're supposed to be doing for the word, you will ascend to the light. You'll be called home. But if you're not, for whatever reason, if you're not, you get called by the dark and you get to go home there. And nobody who ends up in the dark will feel that they're justified. It's justified that they're going to experience the sorrows and pain that they are going to experience. And they are absolutely right. There's absolutely no justification whatsoever, but that's the way it's going to be. So you can bitch about it all you want. Doesn't change a fucking thing. And so, but I have a feeling that the Pacific Northwest, I think that God is about ready to deal with all of these motherfuckers. And I've dealt with a lot of them out there. I love the Pacific Northwest. Big. Fuck. But then Erland was awful too. And Harlan hasn't been, Harlan is okay. Good people. and people who just don't want to get involved. So, you know, they shy away, and that's fine. That's fine. You know, I think heaven is about ready to show me on a way that I need to be shown. And they better fucking figure out how to live forever, because I have a feeling that death is upon them all. I think that when it goes, it'll be earthquake, volcano, and tsunami. Biblical in nature. That's what I fucking see. And I think it's about ready. It's gonna happen sooner than not. Could be wrong. Maybe it'll happen a million years from now. Maybe not. Maybe not. And that's what heaven showed me. So we'll see what happens. With that said, that's my video for today.